Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson. That audio is sweet down there on the beach. No echo, no nothing. Sounds crystal clear. You've got the studio fully installed and living that beach life. I'm up here in the hot sun. And Cody are just the dog days of summer. No, coming off 4th of July weekend. I work, Conrad, but as we roll into July, birthday month, it's all kinds of things going on. But the summer is midstream. Lots and lots of going on. Shoes baseball. We had Sergeant Slaughter last week, and he did us a solid military appreciation night and had a enormous crowd out, fireworks, all kinds of stuff going on up there. So, folks, if you're in the Central Illinois area, drop on by for a ball game. Get all the information you want at shoesbaseball.com. We are in full stride. As we're recording this, Double A Arn Anderson, Four Horseman Night, he's in the house. And ironically, as you would have it, it's all you can eat at the ballpark. We lined that promotion up, but no. All fun and games at Shoes Baseball. Conrad, how has your week? 2 weeks. I know you were on the IR, kind of took a page out of Cassio's book last week. You guys are a little rough on the sewage system in North Alabama, but maybe we shouldn't dirty up the pot and go into those conversations, should we?
Man, I was sick as a dog last week. I'm just thankful to be amongst the living, but so much has happened since I was down for the count here on the program. We started it off with Forbidden Door, man. What an incredible show that was in New York on Long Island. You did the pre-show. Man, just a barn burner of a main event. Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay. My goodness. You've seen the progression of Swerve in AEW. Certainly think a lot of Will Ospreay and kept an eye on what he was doing over in New Japan. But what'd you think of that main event, Jeff? That was something else, wasn't it?
You know what? And I didn't want to interrupt you there because I thought you may be wanting my comments on that match specifically, but I thought the event, it was great. I've said it a couple of times here on My World. The man, the Billy Goat, Willie Ospreay, his athleticism is just at a different level. You see, you just see different athletes come along, and they talk about when Michael Jordan got to the NBA, how good his athletic ability, and he could go out and score 30 or 40 or not. He didn't really become that MVP until his defensive skills and came kind of the complete package. LeBron James, we could talk about all kinds of athletes that just their athleticism sets them apart. To me, that's where Ospreay's at right now. His athleticism just makes him a cut above the rest. That being said, and he's coming. He's still a young guy, and I'm not saying he's not the complete package because he's, title after title in Japan. But as far as the American style, the tools are definitely in the toolbox, and the progression is coming. His in-ring ability obviously is there. I just think his notoriety and his persona, and it just nothing replaces time in this business. But Swerve isn't, on the other side of that, go back and look at the matches when I was doing the research, and shout out to Alex Marvez, who helps with quite a bit of the research and the different matches and rematches and all that kind of stuff. I think that in a lot of ways, that match is going to go down as a defining moment. I think going into it, going to be a defining moment for one of them. I think coming out of it, Conrad, it could be a defining moment for both of them because Ospreay didn't get the W, but I think he created new fans. I'll say that. And I think that's kind of what it's all about. But the match that just kind of took me aback, Conrad, is the Bryan Danielson match.
Oh, man, that was something else, wasn't it? What did you think of that one?
Well, and I wasn't super familiar with
Shingo
Takagi. I think that's right. Man, what a story, what a match, what an effort. In the building, and I watched that live, as far as, not through a monitor. And I actually changed positions and then was watching it in a group of people. But man, Bryan Danielson is special. He's been doing it a long time, but my goodness, he throws it all out there. And so I was super impressed with that. A lot of others, but man, 15 matches, 5 hours of wrestling. Um, it goes without saying, you get your money's worth when you purchase a AEW pay per view. So yeah, Forbidden Door. Man, that's right. So we didn't talk last week, so we got to catch up on a lot here. But Forbidden Door was super special for a lot of reasons. But for me, a lot of ways, the number one reason was the Bryan Danielson effort. If you,
I know that you watch wrestling differently. You have to. I mean, you're not just a fan. Obviously, you're a wrestling fan, but you're somebody who puts together matches and does these performances. And I've gotten the vibe for the past several months that you really hold Bryan Danielson in high regard as a fan and someone who does this. Is he maybe the person who's still active in ring that you admire their game the most?
I did. I want to say time I was with WWE, and I did some media for them. I'm trying to think what it would have been for, or maybe it was during COVID. And anyway, a guy kind of flat out asked me, and I, just the way he asked me, he said, "All right, we got nothing but time here." And we've talked off and on the pod here, but he asked me, like, "What do you think? Who do you, who, I think he may have said those words, who do you have in the highest, with the highest regards?" And I think, and we'll get to it in a minute. I had a good phone call with King Jerry Lawler, and we called up on some different things. And he actually watched last Wednesday night, Conrad. So we'll come back to that. But and it's definitely how I was brought up in this business, but also the TNA days, just my entire career, looking at talent and looking at um, I guess really the complete package. I referenced Michael Jordan, not till he became a great defensive player, a great team player, a great leader. Did you really go, okay, he's the MVP without question? Because to me, there's nothing Brian can't do. And I say that in that he leads by example across the board. You never, his effort is always almost to a detriment, Conrad. I think sometimes he pushes himself too hard when maybe he doesn't have to. But his ability to tell a wrestling story, I put Lawler back in his heyday. There's a couple of others, but Brian gets out the proverbial pen and paper, and you have no idea what story he's about to write, other than it's going to be a Bryan Danielson classic. And the Shingo match, I've just seen him having with so many different opponents. So yes, modern day, current in ring talent that are blowing and going full time. I do. I put Brian at the very top for multiple reasons, but it is his ability to, man, I sound like a broken record, Conrad. Boy, oh boy, his matches evoke emotion across the board. And that's what it's all about. He sells tickets, he sells buy rates, he sells emotion.
Speaking of emotion, I want to talk about the Owen Hart tournament. But before we do, I want to remind everybody that a friend of yours who knows a thing or two about emotion south of the border, he's going to be joining us live this week at adfreeshows.com. I'm talking, of course, about Sam Adonis live, who I guess has become a bit of a protege for you south of the border. He is not well liked or well thought of down below. And a lot of that, it's his association with you. And he's going to be live, as folks are listening to this, later on tonight at adfreeshows.com. I'm pretty excited because we're going to be diving into the world of Lucha Libre through the eyes of our pal Sam Adonis. He's going to be answering your member questions about CMLL, about AAA, about All Japan. I mean, this guy has done it all internationally. And I thought, hey, we should spend a little more time learning about Lucha. And who better to let us pick his brain than Sam Adonis. You've spent a little time getting to know Sam. What's your experience been like?
Conrad, you talk about somebody that I hold in very high regard. For those that don't know, a lot of folks know Corey Graves, the name Corey Graves. Um, Sam Adonis and Corey Graves, brothers from Pittsburgh. Their father was an independent wrestling promoter, but Sam, um, got in this business at an early age. Lived in the United Kingdom, I think almost 2 years. And so I'll say he went from paying some dues, in the United States way, way, way back. And he admits this. He was signed to NXT probably too soon, too early. One of those stories. Timing's everything in this business. Then went to the UK, broke ground. And then here's where the story to me really got interesting. Moves to Mexico, and the CMLL dojo is, I think there's legendary stories about maybe Stu Hart's uh, dungeon, or go to Japan and live in the dojo and learn things that way. And way, way back in the day, who was it? Brad Ranigan's trained to crop of guys in Minnesota. But Sam went to Mexico and not just learned lucha libre, which is a different style in so many ways, but did the hard training and understood the culture. And then he's bilingual. He learned the language, and really, really has built his name down there. And I think when people, um, I guess, in the world we live in, you can almost buy into it, and you think, oh, okay, he went to Mexico and that's lucha libre, and there's not too much connection there. But man, I can't say enough good things, and talk about not just good but great at what he does down there, because he can work. Um, he can work any style. That's what I'm saying. He can work any style. But not only that, he understands that and is a box office attraction, and creates revenue in Mexico. I got a ton of respect for that. And when he's the first one who told me, Conrad, that I think y'all had a side conversation a ways back. And I said, I think it's great because you're going to expose folks to a whole nother side of the ad free family of the DNA of lucha libre. So, folks, go out of your way to dive into this and listen to my man Sam, because it is. If you're a fan of wrestling, you will be intrigued, and I guarantee you, whether it's 5 minutes in or 35 minutes in, you're going to want to ask a question because he's that thought provoking. It's good stuff, man. Really good stuff.
Learning Lucha with Sam Adonis. We're going to start it tonight. Pick his brain. This is a fellow who, as Jeff said, grew up in the business, the brother of Corey Graves, the son of an independent promoter, and now bilingual. He's fully immersed in the lucha lifestyle and spends a lot of time south of the border. And we're going to spend some time picking his brain tonight over at adfreeshows.com. Hey, speaking of stuff that's coming up, we should mention that this Saturday, I can't believe this is real, you're going to be wrestling with Satnam Singh and members only to face off against a handful of folks, including Filthy Tom Lawler. It's all going down in Cleveland, Ohio for absolute intense wrestling. Tickets are on sale now at AIWrestling.com. That's AIWrestling.com. You can also catch the event on Triller TV. But I think this will be the first time that you've taken old Filthy Tom Lawler to the woodshed, is it not?
Eddie, I literally, it's funny. I was going to try to remind you, I'm like, we got so much going on, Conrad, with AEW and travel and headed to Calgary. I was going to like, hey, man, this Saturday, what a unique set of circumstances. My Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be loud and proud and waving the Tennessee Titan banner. But Nathan Segura is the color commentator, voice of. He has a radio show Monday through Friday in the Cleveland market. Friends with Lawler, friends with The Miz, friends with a bunch of other bums up in Cleveland. They're close enough to Cincinnati. He may be a friend of Chris Abyss here, but I don't know. But Filthy Tom Lawler, it is an 8-man tag. It is this promotion. It's AIW Absolution. It's their version of the biggest show of the year. It's their Wembley, if you will. It's going to be on Triller, but Holloway, Filthy Tom Lawler, Bishop, and Nathan. Look at Nathan in the suit and tie. audio, video folks out there. But no, the Queen's getting there, and Satnam, they have no idea. But yeah, it's going to be an 8-man tag, sort of independent wrestling at its very core. And the Queen is ready to be there. She was the one who kind of kicked things off and stepped out and let Nathan know who the real boss was. But yeah, 8-man tag. I think it's going to sell out, Conrad. Tickets are blowing and going, and Nathan has been in the ring training and doing video clips and all kind of tweets and Instagram and talking his smack. But he's going to be taken down to size, won't he, Connie, when he gets under my version of the learning tree, wouldn't you say?
I mean, he thinks he knows a thing or two about MMA, but I mean, it's been well versed.
Tom Lawler?
Yeah, you beat Kurt Angle.
Do you know?
You used to have a dojo.
Do you know true story? That was actually discussed as there was some kind of shenanigans, and Filthy Tom Lawler is actually the one that brought it up. And I just kind of looked at him. I said, man, with all due respect, a guy with your pedigree and a guy with your understanding, for you to recognize that that I am an MMA champion,
expert,
that I retired undefeated.
Absolutely.
Shamrock may have done the ankle lock. Kurt may have, made it famous, but Conrad, you know as well as I do, I perfected it. And so Filthy Tom Lawler kind of tipped his cap for me. So I think that a lot of folks, he likes to profess that was a sign of respect. I take it it's a sign of fear. Well,
because that's what it is. I mean, listen, we're not making that up, but you and I are really good friends with a trademark attorney who specializes in patent law. And this is a fact. You can just look this up. Jeff Jarrett owns the patent on the ankle lock and the heel hook. Now, I know that's going to sound like you'd be like, well, shouldn't Judo Gene? Nope. Well, don't you think it's possible that one of the Gracies? Nope. Everybody with any walking around sense, as we say here in the South, knows that Double J, right there on the banks of Hendersonville, Tennessee, right, overlooking Old Hickory, he worked out all the kinks in the heel hook and the ankle lock, and he owns the patent. Now, you can't see it behind him because there's only so many trophies we can fit into a frame at a time. So this is not an MMA show. It is a wrestling show. But if Lawler wants some, he can come get some. He will walk into that ring. He will limp out. Fair to say?
I don't think he's going to make it. He's more afraid of Karen than me. That's probably the true story. And I'm taking my special weapon, Conrad.
Oh, well, that's all you need.
And it's not just a guitar. I'm talking about a living, breathing, managerial genius who is undefeated. Do I need to give you any more hints?
Not only is he undefeated, but I hear that he's undefeated against stink, thanks to our friends at Mando. That's right. Cody Angle knows all about smelling good and feeling good. That's why Cody is rocking Mando this summer. Those catfish don't stand a chance. I'm telling you, this is a big deal. It is a great product. It's something that, well, Jeff and I have been rocking all summer. It's official. School's out, sun's out. It's summer. Let's try to be prepared to not stink. Mando whole body deodorant is going to be your best friend this summer. Mando has been clinically proven to control odor for 72 hours. I've had it on good authority that Cody says it lasts longer than 72 hours.
True.
It's safe for the whole body. That's why Cody just coats himself up. I mean, he's going outside like it looks like he's wearing suntan lotion. He's got so much. It's on his pits. It's on his package. It's on his feet. It's everywhere in between. And what Cody knows, and we're here to share with you, is that Mando stops odor before it starts. When's the best time to put on deodorant? Once you're already stinking? Before it starts. And now they've got 4 cologne quality scents just for us dudes. How about bourbon leather? Doesn't that sound fancy? What about Mount Fuji? Love that. Pro Sport, even Clover Woods. I'm a big believer in this. I want you to go out of your way to try the bourbon leather and the Mount Fuji. I'm sure Cody's running around with the Pro Sport. But whatever you're looking for this weekend, maybe you're going to do some boating. Maybe you're going to catch some catfish like Cody. Maybe you're going to hit some volleyball. Maybe it's time to get on the beach. Maybe you're going to go do some golfing. Maybe get out and do a little hiking. Mando is your go-to. It's your tag team partner. I'm a big believer in this because it's seriously safe to use anywhere. We mentioned all the fun places, but man, you want to use it in your belly button? You can. You got maybe you got some stinky ass feet like Dave Silva? No problem. This was created by a doctor who really saw firsthand how normal BO was just being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Mando whole body deodorant is now powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but again, it's gentle enough to use anywhere. And you don't have to worry about this because Mando is aluminum free, it's baking soda free, it's cruelty free, it's dye free, it's vegan, and we're going to get you stink free. It's clinically proven to control odor more than just a shower with soap alone. How about this? 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor is like a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, it comes with cream tube deodorant, and it's got 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and even free shipping. Now, luckily, we've got a discount code to get you hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to like 40% off your starter pack. Use our code MyWorld at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com, shopmando.com.
Connie, can I give you a little testimony on Mando?
Please
Mando.
do.
Buddy, when the products that we run down the pipeline here, you got to kind of believe in them. And I said, I'm going to push old Mando to the limit. Cody, I'll just say this. He's pushed that 72-hour deal to the limit, but being on airplanes and getting luggage, and in the summertime, it gets hotter in Hades, travel and airports, all that kind of stuff. So that would have been 2 weeks ago, Connie. I had the early wake up call. Queen was not happy. So let's just, it was a 3:30 wake up. So I started my day in Buffalo to Detroit, Detroit to St. Louis, get out, rent a car, drive to Springfield, Illinois, go in one meeting, two meeting, both outside at a baseball stadium, go have a quick lunch, late lunch, early dinner, if you will, back to the ballpark for a 3.5, whatever, 4-hour game, however it long may be. And then I get back to the hotel. And Connie, I just got to put over Mando. It's the real deal. Smelled as fresh at 11 o'clock at night as I did at 3 in the morning. And that's saying something from this old boy who sweats a lot, drinks a lot of fluid, lots of travel. So it's the real deal, folks. Code MyWorld.
Hit it right now, shopmando.com. The code is MyWorld at shopmando.com. That's a fact, Jack. Mando's going to have you smelling good. And another fact is, I'll have you know, a little birdie put it in my ear. That's worth a Google. Your match this past week on Wednesday night was the highest rated quarter hour in Dynamite history.
Oh, stop it.
Not just the highest rated quarter hour of hour 2, not just the highest rated quarter hour of the episode, not just the highest rated quarter hour of the quarter, of the pay-per-view season, of the calendar year. In AEW history, fans were behind you. They were chanting, "We want Jeff." I saw women throwing their babies in the air. They were so excited that you were finally going to take your place at the head of the table.
Oh, God.
Jeff, what happened?
Buddy, I gave him my all. Sometimes, life doesn't always turn out the way. I said that in some comments this weekend. Doesn't always turn out the way we expect it to. But what are we to do except look at life as no obstacles, just opportunities? Johnny, I can tell you this much, and you don't get paid, on effort alone. But the effort that I put in last Wednesday, I will say this, and Karen came over to me so Central Time starts at 7. I think we went on about 8:20, 8:30 or something like that. So she came over around, I don't know, 6, Conrad. And I can laugh about it now, but she's dead serious. And she said, "I'm not going to come back around you again till it's time to go out. I love you," and gave me a big hug. She knew I was dialed in, and I was definitely dialed in. Didn't turn out, Connie, but the effort was there. The emotion was there. The Wintrust Arena I'll remember that. I will remember the match. I'll just say that. Remember that night. Didn't turn out the way I wanted, but I would definitely
I saw a lot of people online saying that it was one of their favorite matches of yours, maybe one of the best matches they had seen from Jeff Jarrett. When you saw that feedback, what did you think?
I definitely it was special to me, not so much for the mechanics. Um, you know, um, I was about to say in 2024, I don't think you can expect a banger out of the Last Outlaw, but also I think in 1986 you might not have expected a banger match, as the kids call it. But as far as the emotional investment in it, that was because we often talk about all that creative, subjective. But to me, one of the things that's just not subjective is that the way to resonate is the emotional investment, and I was emotionally invested in that. Um, and the people in the arena, and I'll go ahead and share it now. Did Memphis this weekend and Collision, and I did media on Friday. But as I was got done Friday night, um, I was driving back up Walnut Grove, a street in Memphis, which is where Lawler used to live. And I just texted him and I said, "Hey, man, just a quick thing." He ended up calling me and we talked. And he joked. He said, "What about you in the ring having these matches?" But anyway, we just kind of went back and forth. Man, he was so good to talk to him. I don't know how long we talked, 35, 40 minutes. But we kind of got into that. I bet I told him on that call 3 times, Conrad. Yep, I learned that from you. And I said, "You're preaching to the choir," and I'd say it back to him. I said, "I know I'm preaching to the choir back and forth." But just kind of uh, the people in the arena in Chicago, and I don't want to. I'd rather let others talk about it, but you watched it. You said you watched it actually with some family members. Um, I think that the feedback and the voicemails and the texts, just the comments. Uh, I think at the very core of it, and this is what me and Jerry kind of ended up landed on. It's one of the reasons why we all love professional wrestling, because you can get caught up in certain matches, stories, and storylines. But if there is a real set of circumstances that are, I'll just say, reality based, and for me, it was a lot of reality based, it is easily just, I don't say you want to believe, you believe. It's not like you have to want to believe. And so you just get caught up in the moment. And for me, I'm still biggest wrestling fan I know. And that's what it was all about. And what the Chicago folks in the house, um, it was cool. They were to me, they were emotionally invested. And when I locked the sharpshooter on, um, man, they came up in my brain, so did I. It was a fun moment. Shivani commented on it that was a fun moment for him as well. And um, damn, Conrad, who in the hell would have thought we'd been talking about this in 2024? I've got a sharpshooter in the ring on a former AEW World Champion and on his return match, and been off a couple of months. It was a very surreal night for me in so many ways, but I'm very grateful for it. I'll say that.
Coach Rosie is with us here live, and he wants to know, how did you feel physically and emotionally after your epic match against Hangman?
Well, I've said this over and over and over. Wrestling once every month or whatever, or a couple of weeks or whatever it is. Um, Maybe I'm a little delusional, but man, it takes a toll because of it just the rhythm and the cadence and all that. Um, but I got right back on that cardio bike. Literally, I did my stretching the following morning before I came home. 4th of July, I did some more stretching. It just, the recovery time, I had to dial in on it and do what I got to do. Emotionally, and I don't know if Conrad, you've seen the comments that I made just this past weekend, but I had a conversation on Friday with somebody that I respect a lot, and that it's like, because I've asked myself, why do I get still upset? I mean, Conrad, was the Owen episode one, anyway, 1, 2, or 3? I know it was early, and I got emotional then. I've talked about um, in 2017 in the darkest part of my life, and I referenced that and kind of peeling the layers of the onion back. Got emotional then. This weekend they asked for comments, and I asked, I'm like, my God, what is the why does it still come out so raw in a lot of ways? And the guy that I talked to, who I respect a lot in what he does, he said, Jeff, this don't take this the wrong way. I don't think he used those words, but he said, knowing what I know and dealing with what I've dealt with, it's pretty easy for me to understand. You care, which is a good thing. Like you really care for Owen, cared for Owen, past tense, present tense, everything. But also, it hurt you. It was an emotional hurt that you never process. 17 now, however long, it's 25 years ago now. And so, Coach Rosie's question, how'd that feel emotionally? It is still a roller coaster. Um, I think Wednesday is going to be another emotional roller coaster. So the emotional part of it, I don't think that you feel what you feel, and you can't. You can kind of compartmentalize, which I became an expert at in my years, but that's not healthy. And so I think you just kind of have to process. I have to process the emotions and live it, and breathe it, and then move on through them.
I was not processing the emotions so well this past Wednesday night. I was very disappointed and tweeted "F this," and that got a little bit
Conrad, I did not catch that until the following day.
Well, it got a lot of reaction from me. People who were like, "Did you really think Jeff Jarrett was going to win?" And then that damn dirty, rotten scoundrel Hangman Adam Page. There's a little twist that I saw on social media. Maybe this story's not over. From what I understand, you're going to be the last outlaw. Jeff Jarrett is going to be a special enforcer for the match in Calgary this Wednesday between Bryan Danielson and Hangman Adam Page. Is that right?
That is true. In Memphis, Collision, actually South Haven, Mississippi. He went to maybe take a shortcut, and I let it be known I'm not coming for retaliation. Hangman, I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to see this tournament through the end to the best of my ability. And it's the finals of the match, and I just stopped him from using a weapon, and Christian slid in the back door and more shenanigans. And so that is contrary to maybe what people have seen me do for the last 30 years. But for this tournament and this tournament only, I want to make sure that the spirit of Owen is shown through and through. And so that's going to be my job, Connie.
You ain't going to come down the ringside and pop up with some red noses for everybody, are you?
No, don't think that. But I may have. I already asked. You bringing your guitar? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to decide that. I don't know if that's a lot of honor and integrity, but I don't know. Wednesday's going to be interesting. I'll just say that, pal. Danielson, as we've just covered earlier, one of my favorites, maybe my most favorite in-ring performer as it stands today, against the guy who beat me. So got to respect Danielson. And for this finals, I'll respect Hangman as long as he respects me. So,
I mean, I'm just saying, you were just in Memphis and Nashville's right around the corner. This might be the summer of Jeff.
oh, blood and guts coming to Bridgestone. It's crazy how the timing, yeah, it's bizarre. I'll say that.
AEWTIX.com is where you can pick up your tickets to see Jeff Jarrett in person kick somebody's ass, let him leave with a guitar necklace. Or if you can't make it and you're going to be flipping through the channels anyway, do what I'm doing. Stop in and see about AEW Dynamite this Wednesday night from Calgary, the finals of the Owen Hart tournament. So our topic today, Jeff, after we've been rambling on for 35 minutes, we're going to do a watch along. And it's a pretty famous WCW version of Monday Night Raw. It's the infamous Tacoma Raw where, well, we tried to launch WCW inside WWE and it died the very same day. It went down July 2nd, 2001. What do you got, Jeff?
So I do want doing the research. And I remember this was smack dab in the middle of the summer of No Worries.
Yes.
My gut tells me Mr. Jeremy Borash would have been at the house. But in summertime, we use our downstairs room because upstairs even can get hot and all this. But I specifically remember this episode coming on and, I'm curious about this. And, in the summers around here, it doesn't get fully dark till like 8:30. So we're out on the water almost sometimes after 8:30 those days, but no. But I remember coming in and we were cooking, but I had the TV on and all this. But here's what I want you to kind of set up, not just for me, but the My World listeners. So was the design at this point, or is this more or less behind the scenes, that WCW was going to get an hour of Raw? Did I read that right or interpret that right on the research, or why was this a main event? I do remember Buff and Booker and all that, but and man, I've got some thoughts on this and who killed WCW. And that's a whole nother, I had a conversation in some old school Memphis folks and we talked about that. And we talked about, anyhow, I don't want to get off traffic. What was by design? What was this Monday Night Raw supposed to be? A precursor to WCW taking the time slot? What was the plan?
We're going to talk all about that. We want you guys to watch along with us. It's season 9, episode 27. So get your Peacock out, pull up Monday Night Raw, season 9, episode 27. It went down July 2nd, 2001. And I'm at 000 all the way across. Jeff, hopefully you're muted. We'll count down and we'll press play. Are you ready on your end?
I'm ready, pal.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play. So we got the signature open here, and we are just days away from the big invasion angle really getting kicked off in Atlanta. And that's maybe the biggest question. Is Raw 1 week after this was going to be in Atlanta? And here we are in Tacoma, Washington, the week before, and we're choosing to do this WCW match here. In the weeks leading to this, we saw Mike Awesome, who's a WCW wrestler, win the hardcore title. We also saw Booker T beat up Vince McMahon and run through the crowd with his pal Shane McMahon. So we're trying to do some storytelling. And I think the original idea was, hey, maybe we'll have SmackDown be one show and we'll have, Monday Night Raw be another show. Those are the ideas that were floated around. And of course, in this era, they've recently taken a big deal from TNN. So Spike is going to be the home of Monday Night Raw. They've left USA. In the process, of course, that effectively ends the television deal for ECW. So the cheese stands alone. Vince McMahon now owns ECW, having bought it out of bankruptcy court, and he owns WCW, and he's got a lot of that tape library, but he doesn't have all the stars. So we're going to do like a test run for what WCW inside the WWE might look like on this show. Arn Anderson's going to do commentary along with Scott Hudson. The match we're going to see, maybe infamously, is going to be Booker T and Buff Bagwell. And it's crazy to think that while all this is going on, you're just floating around the lake on a jet ski.
Well, here's what's, so bizarre to me, and I don't want to jump ahead or anything like this, but that how could anyone think, and I get it when you get wrapped up in things, but the billionaire Ted skits, the promotional war, and both promotions, the brands were much bigger than even talent, including the tip top guys during the Attitude Era. It was the WWF Monday Night Raw that was just so red hot, and how they and that's why, I know you've done podcasts with Bruce and JR and others that have much more of an insight into any of this. Because, like you just said, I was chilling and getting paid. I was on, payroll, and my contract didn't end till the end of October. So I was loving life and just started thinking, during this summer about TNA and all that. But how they could ever think that any WCW talent was going to be remotely received in a babyface role under any circumstances. That was one question I was going to have you. And then the other was, and I get it, budgets and everything, but none of the top guys came over. And I know Booker was champion, but he was on the rise, nothing like he is today or that he became through this run. But Booker, I believe, was the top guy, and obviously it worked out great for him. But no Hall, no Nash, no Goldberg, no Hogan, no Savage, all the kind of the top talent that turned the tide, if you will, in the promotional war were a part of it. So the WWE universe, as I'll call them, of course they were going to reject all of it. Do you think they just overlooked that thought, Conrad?
I think this is the most unhinged version of Vince McMahon we ever got. I just want to add some context to all this. Okay. He just bought ECW out of bankruptcy. He just bought WCW. He just had the biggest WrestleMania in history. He just turned Steve Austin heel. He's also got the XFL that he's just launched, and it's failing badly. There's a lot going on right here.
Wow. Okay. That's context in a huge way. The XFL.
Flopping majorly.
This is the summer that it was flopping?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not on the ball and probably wasn't listening to anybody around him that may have thrown up. Hell, I bought ECW. I bought WCW. They're both shit brands. I'll make it into I want. Well, I guess because just kind of the miscalculation of no top talent, and we're going to portray anybody as a babyface. God bless Booker, man. What a tough spot he was in.
It's really bad. They had 10 weeks. And then they did the playoffs. It started in February. It's not doing well. The first game, I think everybody was curious, so they tuned in, and boy, it just went down remember from
that.
there.
Yeah, it was JR and Lawler, and because they were doing hits and stuff like that, they were giving it a go. But as we're watching the Open, I don't know exactly what the chairman is talking about, but he's into his in-ring, laying it down here, which, again, take a couple of steps back and the real macro look, that's the face of the winning brand, if you will, in front of the winning audience. Because the fans, I think, in the whole extrapolated all the way out, I think the WWF longtime fans said, hell yeah, we won the war.
Right.
They won. They won as well as Vince.
It's that weird tribalism that exists in wrestling now, but it was certainly existing back then. Fans were really invested in which show is winning and which show is losing. And I watch the show that gets better ratings. And what's so weird about that is
they watch both.
That doesn't exist in any other form of entertainment. Like, never am I having an NFL conversation with somebody and they say, man, I don't know how you pull for them. Their ratings are in the shitter. You'd be like, wait, what'd you say? Who gives a what? Like, how is that possible? Right? It doesn't make any sense, but it exists in wrestling. And so we started off with this in-ring promo from Vince McMahon. He's talking about bad weather and apples and trying to turn himself heel. Angle's going to come out and he's going to mention that he enjoys himself at Ricky Martin concerts. Austin's going to come out And then Shane McMahon's music's going to play. And that's when they're talking about this big Invasion pay-per-view. And he's going to announce Booker T versus Bagwell for tonight. And the crowd boos. The thing that gets me about this.
Okay, I want to hear this. I'm as engaged in hearing much more your thoughts than my thoughts on this. You've got so much more context.
The pay-per-view is almost 3 weeks away. So it's 20 days away from this because that pay-per-view Invasion happens on July 22nd. Why would we launch it here? I get that the 3-week turn and we got to start pushing the pay-per-view, but we're in Atlanta the following week. Why would we not do a big WCW welcome thing in Atlanta? Why here?
Well, look, again, JR and Bruce, they were both there at this time, right?
Yeah.
And just the context that you gave, the XFL, the eye off the ball, to me would play a major deal. I also think, and there's so much water under the bridge and so much backstory and all this, but Stone Cold as a heel. And let me ask you this, because the way Stone Cold, we'll say, was treated in WCW, and he gets to get his hands on any WCW talent, to me, that makes him flip back babyface. Just kind of the whole layered, the layer upon layer of this, what you just said, Atlanta coming up, it doesn't make sense. I'll say this. This was a pretty big botch. Would you not say, Conrad?
It's the biggest fumble, I think, in wrestling history, storyline wise.
Do you think the biggest one?
The biggest. Wow. I mean, think about, Jeff, when you went down to the newsstand in the 70s, certainly in the 80s and throughout the 90s, all of the 80s and 90s, there was all this fantasy booking. What if Hulk Hogan wrestled Ric Flair? What if The Undertaker wrestled Sting? What if Goldberg wrestled Stone Cold? What if? Now it's really going to happen. Like, we could really put DX and the NWO together. We could put Goldberg and Austin together. We could put all of these fantasy matches seem possible, but instead of us starting with that, we get, respectfully, Booker T and Buff Bagwell. Like, that's not what we wanted.
No.
So the result is this. Team WWF at this pay-per-view is going to be made up of Chris Jericho, Kane, Kurt Angle, Steve Austin, and The Undertaker. Team WCW/ECW, that's the alliance, is Booker T, Bubba Ray and Devon, DDP, and Rhino. And no disrespect to those guys, but goodness gracious. And we should also mention The Rock is out making movies and Triple H tore his quad. It's a mess.
Wow. And so, as far as a little context for our My World listeners, because I don't believe, we hadn't covered it on here. The fact that they didn't bring over any of the top guys, what were the discussions that took place between JR, Bruce, Vince? Were there any about, hey, should we go after this top guy or that top guy?
They went after all of them, and here was their pitch. Now, you have a Time Warner contract, so we know you can sit at home and make $1.5 million. But what about going on the road for 200 dates a year, and we'll pay you half as much? Now, I know you could sit at home and make twice as much doing nothing, but don't you want to work real hard for half the money and potentially injure yourself? And everyone, and I mean almost everyone, Booker T and DDP said, no, we'll take that. We want to. I mean, Booker T even said on Who Killed WCW, I didn't want to lose my spot. It's out of sight, out of mind. I had built up this wrestling career. I had this momentum going. Well, no way I was going to take 1.5 years off or whatever it was. So DDP and Booker T realized, hey man, our time to do this is finite. I want to do it. I'm going to go do it and battle myself. Nobody else does. Everybody else sits at home and collects that paycheck.
Okay. All right. So fate.
Yeah.
Okay. So which lends into the kind of the process of, Can't have the top stars. So what you really have is the three letters WCW. Um, Man, they didn't take the next route and really make them heels. Just I don't know.
Well,
It's
everything's upside down because the WWE since the beginning of April, they've been trying to get us to boo Steve Austin. We don't want to boo Steve Austin.
yeah.
But I think Steve Austin took a look and said, man, if Rock's off making movies, who else is there left for me to work with? And of course, the original idea would have been he may have been doing something with Hunter, but when Hunter tears his quad, well, that's out the window. So now what? Here we are.
Wow. Fate. Who would have thought when the acquisition? So this was so the last Nitro was what? March.
March 26, 2001.
So this is April, May.
3
Oh,
hours,
wow.
3 months and a week later.
Not even that. Not quite. Damn. Okay. So less than 12 weeks later, this is the next evolution.
And meanwhile, you're sitting at home trying to come up with what the next plan is going to be.
Coming up with the flying Elvises and cheeks. And
Now we know serious business that you're actually going to launch in 02, but here in the summer of 01, were you just enjoying the downtime or were you really working on creative stuff?
oh, I mean, and that's where JB would tell you the story that I started, and I told him this out on the lake one day that you know, no, I immediately, I don't say him. I came home, what you just said, into March. Then we get into April, and I knew pretty quick that okay, uh, I'm going to get paid through let's say the end of October, so 6 months. But what are my next steps? And just taking, I kept coming back, Conrad, to the point of over and over and over. Without a number two, there's no such thing as a number one. It's all that. There is really a void in the marketplace, um, wrongly or rightly. You know, the different Jay Hossman would be one of them. But digging into the revenue streams of because overnight WCW went away. It was getting we'll call it a top three program on TBS and TNT, Raw and Nitro. It's not like the viewers. It's not like ratings were terrible. The buy rates, weren't what they used to be, but there was still there was a lot. I'll say just a lot of revenue being generated in those days. I really became very aware and kind of latched on it because in the 90s when we would go and at WWF tour Germany and the UK and Israel and India and South Africa and just do these tours and even WCW did those as well in Australia. I knew the business was global and Andrew McManus had reached out and he wanted to run some tours and all that. My mind and my brain immediately started gearing in. Right. How can we go create revenue? How can we go create, is it tours? In the very, very formative days, is it tours? Is it, how do we monetize this? And Andrew McManus, and we've talked about it on a prior episode, the WWA, his promotion, the original kind of thought that he thought would be is in essence, kind of run it like a rock tour. You're going to have all these stars that are not aligned with any promotion, and we'll run wrestling in mid-size arenas, and it'll be a 7 to 10 day tour of creating house shows. So all the different kind of thought processes were going through in my mind, and I told in this summer, I told JB an idea that I had about Toby suplex me. I didn't really have it nailed down. That came obviously the months later, but me and JB had talked about different things, and I talked to others. But in my brain, I'd get on that jet ski some days after workout, gym, eat. Uh, that was what my day consisted of, and go for a ride and just kind of think through. But I knew going back to there's a void in the marketplace. How do we fill it? because there's one company, and at one company, you're going to have your top guys, you're going to have your support, you're going to have your mid card, you're going to have your opener, you're going to have developmental, and then you're going to have your kind of guys that float in and out. But that's one brand. I just didn't see um, it. Where was it going to go? That they had so many what ifs as far as the WWE at the time. But what are next steps for that company? And I knew that there was going to be opportunity on some level. So going, at this time frame, this is what I was thinking.
We're taking a look as we're watching along here, this very special edition of Raw from Tacoma, July 2nd, 2001. We see the biker version of The Undertaker ride down to the ring and his wife on the back. What do you think of this version, this presentation of The Undertaker?
The American Badass.
Yep.
This isn't that what I mean? He was full on American. I mean, being a fan of Mark back to the Mean Mark Calloway days, his in-ring ability, but I felt the mystique. I kind of understood because Mark had been there in the late 80s, and now we're 13, 14, 15 years later. But I thought, well, the Undertaker worked I didn't say it in these words in those times, but I'll say it now. But the Undertaker really was red hot to me, or as hot as ever during the Attitude Era. Now we're kind of transforming in the American Badass. It to me, it didn't have the mystique that the gong and the entrance and the mystiqueness. And I was a huge fan of Paul Bearer and their chemistry and everything that went with it. But I understood they wanted to try something new. Kind of looking at it in context, man, I guess you could say your top two baby faces, Taker and Austin, but both changing personas. That's interesting timing as well to kind of think through that.
We see he's wrestling A-Train here. Matt Bloom doing big things for NXT these days. Did you spend any time with him at all through your career?
Well, I mean, when he first started up there, yeah, I mean, I can't say that, night in and night out, but yeah, I was around him often. And always he's a thinker. I mean, I think that's the best way. He always, he had the badass look and, looked like he'd rip your head off. But at the end of the day, you start having conversation with him. You go, okay, this guy's a businessman. And these days he wanted to learn, and look where he's gone now. But yeah, you could see that at an early age, no doubt. Did I see this is for a title? This match that we're watching right now, Taker and uh, what I don't want to. What did they call Albert at this time? What was his?
I think he's A-Train.
Okay,
I could be wrong on that.
yeah. Well, there yep, Albert. Okay. Thank you, Silver. You're ready, buddy. You ain't sleeping over there. He ain't just waffle stomping. He's rocking and rolling.
Yeah, at this era, Stone Cold is the world heavyweight champion. Albert is the intercontinental champion. The Dudley Boys are the tag title champions. The European champions, Matt Hardy. The hardcore champ is Mike Awesome. The light heavyweight champ is X-Pac. On the WCW side of things, Booker T is both the U.S. and the world champion. Palumbo and O'Hare are the tag champions. And Shane Helms is the cruiserweight champion.
So they brought all the WCW belts and exposed them that early, right?
Well, they're building towards the Invasion pay-per-view 20 days from here. So you're going to have a WWF tag title match and then a WCW tag title match and so on and so forth.
Got it. And
it feels like a big opportunity. And as we said, it's been fantasy booked by the Aftermags for years and years. These days, we know TNA has a bit of a working relationship with WWE. We've seen a lot of their stars on NXT. Do you think they could do an Invasion angle? Would it still work in 2021 or 2024?
Execution is everything. I mean, the shorter answer is absolutely it can. It's, when I think back in the territory era, the different kind of, we'll call it invasion angles done correctly. If you really want to think about Randy Savage and how, him and Lawler, that feud, because he had been the there's DDP appearing on screen. But when Savage stepping into the Memphis studios, 1960 Union Avenue, people knew that he had ran another promotion. Um, the, you know, the invasion angle can always be done differently. I think at the end of the day, the most successful invasion angle, and people, I'll ask you, but I truly think the NWO wasn't in. Look, it had different twists and turns, but was it an invasion angle? People thought, okay, here's a band of folks that all made their name in the WWF at the time, and they're taking over. And it obviously popped a huge number and did massive success. But it just depends on the execution of it all. But back to your deal, I think it could.
It's a fun day here. We see DDP come down and interfere in the Undertaker's match, so it's clear that that's what's next. But then his wife runs a little bit of distraction. Kane comes down, starts beating up on DDP, and now Sarah's going to get a little bit of that action too. Low blow from DDP or on to DDP here. It feels as if hey, you remember this guy? We're going to have a couple of our guys take turns beating the shit out of him, and then we're going to have his wife kick him in the nuts. I don't really understand how we're getting over WCW here.
What I mean, and I don't think, well, the Who Killed WCW, uh, that topic of discussion feels like it just keeps going and going and going. Uh, do you think Vince said, "I got the library and I paid for that. I'm going to make sure I kill this brand"? So now, I mean, did that ever cross anyone's mind by design? Because I do believe, at the end of the day, um, him breathing down everyone's neck and he got his ass handed to him for 83 weeks. He made it a point that I'm going to come back. He readjusted the sales and just annihilated them in so many ways, and you know, worked smarter, harder, and you know, people on WCW side were not helping matters. But I do think Vince is the one who ultimately killed it, and I think we're seeing the final nails going into it right here. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, that's the way it's going to shake out for sure. It just feels like a big opportunity storytelling wise. Was that ever any sort of crossover invasion angles ever discussed to the best of your recollection in Memphis or in TNA? Like times when you had influence in the backstage area. Do you remember it ever being seriously discussed? I mean, we
Well,
know how worked the tease of it was with the NWO, but in the other iterations of your life.
yeah. Well, I mean, in Memphis, gosh, just trying to think who would have had him up, but I mean, it depends on kind of the slant you took it. But when you look at the Texas WCCW story, that the whole mindset that my father looked at was based off of, in a lot of ways, the syndication money. And it was big money, generating a lot. And the brand that was going to be syndicated that my dad owned, he owned it wholly. There was no red tape, was USWA. So he had to figure out a way to make the USWA brand the brand that was front and center, but not only that, well accepted by the fan base. And so he started methodically in Skandar Akbar, uh, who were the heel and the storytellers, and ingrained in that product for years and years and years. He made them for lack of a better word, kind of the evil empire. And so they started aligning with that. And Eric Embry, the people's champ, if you will. He's the one who did the right promos and he got the people backing USWA. So that invasion angle of kind of reverse, but because WCW had been the brand in the market for years and years and years, and USWA were the babyface invasion folks, but they told the right story. And when Eric Embry, who had been a heel for the most part in that Texas market for years and years and years, but had flipped babyface, aligned with USWA, and Akbar, who had been a heel for years, was the face of WCCW in so many ways. When they did the match, and Percy Pringle is what he was called at the time, and Eric Embry went over to that wall and they literally tore down the WCCW banner and got a huge pop. Conrad, I think that was a unique story that really got over. And from a revenue standpoint, boy, it made it clean. And you know, uh, watching that Iron Claw movie not too long ago, just the parts of that were, obviously it's a fictitious story in a lot of ways, or it's a Hollywood story. I'll say that they didn't touch on it, but Conrad, back to your point, have I ever been a part of an Asian angle? I lived that week to week. That was is super successful.
We're seeing Molly Holly here wrestle Crash Holly. This is
Straight up intergender, huh?
straight up intergender in 2001. And I know that's been controversial at different times where some people are for it, some people are against it. Where did your dad land on that?
Oh, he absolutely loved integrating females into storylines. He kind of, I don't say put it in buckets, but he loved, like, he booked the Brian Christopher versus Mixed Texas story, and Miss Texas Jackie Moore could go, she could wrestle. So I can remember him, and Lawler too, them kind of laying that kind of story out, opposed to, hey, all we need here is a cat fight. But you know, Bill Dundee's wife put her hair up. Just the different ways to integrate females into storylines. My dad was always a huge proponent of it. And if a girl could work or appear that she could handle herself, he loved having a female kick a guy's ass, because he just said, how many people can live vicariously through that? So many. He wasn't real big and just wouldn't do man on woman violence because he just thought it was distasteful. Not to say that a shot here or a shot there, that it could happen here and there, but generally speaking, he liked to tell. Well, that's what he did. He liked to tell stories, and if he could integrate a female into it, it in his mind, and I agree, it just added to the emotion and sometimes took it to a whole nother level. Karen in Mexico, the success she had down there or continues to have is just people, she's passionate. They kind of latch onto it and love to hate her, but it's because just the culture lends itself to it as well.
We're seeing a little backstage skit here. We got Tori Wilson coming to visit Vince McMahon, who's got Kurt Angle on his couch, Stone Cold Steve Austin at his right shoulder, and of course, Deborah is in the room as well. Man, this version of Stone Cold, I'm not going to argue it wasn't entertaining because it damn sure was, but still just kind of weird to think about a heel Stone Cold. I mean, I know he did great heel work, but fans just really wanted to cheer him. I know that eventually we got to spots like that with The Rock and with Ric Flair and with Hulk Hogan. Was Lawler like that at times in Memphis where he's trying to be a heel, but fans just want to cheer him?
Oh gosh. um Multiple times. There would be certain set of circumstances. And look, there was a time, I'm trying to think of, I'll go way down in a rabbit hole, but Lawler and Dundee had babyface matches. Lawler and Dutch had babyface matches. And sometimes organically it would come out and you would have, like Louisville might have been at times them leaning a little bit toward a Dundee or a Dutch. But that would happen organically, and the people would situationally, um, Lawler could be the heel. But when you tried to force it down, and sometimes Lawler would, because of whatever the business dictated, he would do that. But you could tell in the arena, just the real emotion wasn't there. Going back to this Wednesday, when I walked through, there was a contingent. Not everybody can watch, and they didn't have a clue about the last outlaw coming to the ring. The last time I was in the market, they booed me. And then Hangman Page, he hadn't been back in months. And so organically, it was easy for them to boo me and cheer Hangman. But once the tone of the match was laid out, the people were invested in it. And so that's where the golden rule lesson, and this is what me and Lawler talked about on Friday night is if you really listen and know how to listen to the people, they're going to tell you so much, but you got to listen to them, period. You have to listen to them.
Well, we see backstage. How surreal is this? You see Christian looking at a big cup there, and there's the former Edge standing over his shoulder. These guys are doing some of their best work they've ever done in AEW. It's pretty wild to see them here in 2001, is it not?
Yeah. So 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy. What's the cup there? Is that a symbolism of, I'm just trying to think, what was at stake for that? What would they, hardcore? No, I don't know.
No, it's not. It's not a wrestling thing. They're hockey guys.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a Stanley Cup. Maybe it's a Stanley Cup. I don't know. Going back to the Austin and
It's Edge's King of the Ring trophy, but they made it look like, the like
Stanley Cup.
yeah.
The Kurt and Austin relate dynamic on screen was highly entertaining, but they were their main event guys, and I don't want to say comedy routine, but they wasn't that their role during this time.
Yeah, they're not main event guys. Edge and Christian are not yet there.
No. Kurt and Austin.
Oh yeah, Kurt and Austin. Yeah, it's funny, haha. And this is another example of people who like to cite
unhinged. It was all over the place. That's where I'm going with the product was all over its place.
Yes,
the invasion wasn't working. Taker was American Badass. Steve and Kurt are quasi comedy. Yeah, I don't know.
Lord bless him. It's a mess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've talked so many different episodes on here that TNA was a mess during this one, or WCW was a mess. We're actually talking about a time frame that WWF was just a freaking mess. Would you not say, Conrad?
Oh, there ain't no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not this era is not looked upon fondly. It hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely aware of that. But when you do a watch back like we're watch along like we are doing today, you kind of just see, Lord bless them, all over the place, and
Yes.
They've bounced around. And the Crash Holly, that segment, I'm not sure where all that was going. Yeah, a mess, pal, a true mess.
Now, this is the era where Russo is, of course, not involved. What's your relationship with Russo like, if there is one, in 2000?
Oh gosh, so yeah, summer of no worries. I mean, he was in Atlanta, and I think, he was an employee. So, I, I think I may be wrong, but I think he went right into opening CD Warehouse, and he was a small business owner and completely consumed by that.
I got you.
I think so. I don't think we were talking every day. I don't think it was we were just not talking. I think he was 3 kids at home and starting a CD Warehouse, and his life was consumed.
Of course, we're watching a pretty fun episode. Hopefully, you're watching along with us. We, without the sound on, this looks kind of weird. We got Vince McMahon in the backstage area talking to Tori Wilson. We got some live watch along. We got some folks who are a part of our live studio audience over at adfreeshows.com. Ernie says, Jeff, how does it feel to see the admiration and appreciation stemming from your Owen Hart Cup interview? That interview was super well received. Now that you've had a few weeks to reflect on that, have you had a chance to process that a little better?
Well, Conrad, talk about taking me out of the moment. As I watch Vince and Tori, and this whole thread through this show, obviously is a setup and a payoff for the whole Shane, Stephanie, Linda, with Stone Cold involved in it. But Ernie, To answer your question, and I'll just repeat it, how does it feel to see the admiration and appreciation stemming from your Owen Hart Cup interview? Um, I obviously am very grateful for it. I I appreciate it. Um, all that goes without saying. But Conrad, maybe you can help me out a little bit here in that if you know, you know, in that this is a this is such a unique situation. Um, a part of my journey. Um, all of it is so raw, and I hate to use the word real, but I think that's the true reality of it, is that you know um, there was chatter of it months and months and months ago, and that's kind of how I opened the interview. Hey, how do you feel about being in the Owen Hart Cup? And it is it is so surreal that here we are um, in my 37th year. Um, the things that have happened over the last 7 years, we've touched on it back and forth coming out of the pandemic. Um, went to Top Guy weekend, had lost about 15, 20, 25 pounds. I'm going to make up my mind to get in shape. That happened. Um, the Ric Flair last match thing, set of circumstances happened. Um, the AEW opportunity came along. The pieces of the puzzle that had to happen at WWE in order for just my life to take different twists and turns, and then the AEW set of circumstances, and just how things have happened. And I've really just taken things one day at a time. And in so many ways, Conrad, I've just tried to do my best to get the hell out of the way and let the grand weaver weave whatever he's going to weave. But, and I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I think that there would be an opportunity for me to go to Calgary as a part of the Owen Hart tournament. I mean, it's just incredibly special to me. And I understand it's in the context of the professional wrestling business, which is scripted sports entertainment. But for this third generation guy and the ups and downs and everything that have come with it, and my special friend, who's the son of a promoter, like I'm the son of a promoter, and our bond, but I'm really getting this opportunity. Of course, it's going to be special and emotional. And I think that is the thing that I'm not sure people can fully grasp the reality of the situation because obviously they hadn't walked in my shoes, but it's special. I can't say any more words about the uniqueness of it, but it is just incredibly special, and I'm very grateful.
We got another question from Michael Stutler, who's here with us live. And he says, Double J, that From the Heart video on Owen you shot had me 100% invested in your match with Hangman. I was pissed afterwards. It's been a while since I felt that type of emotion after a match. As a performer, is that like the highest compliment you can get, you think?
People upset.
Yeah, just the idea that they're emotionally invested.
It, to me, that's the essence of our industry. To now, not just creative subjective, our business is subjective. But in the most simplest terms, if I'm walking into I'll say a boardroom, Conrad, uh, of bankers or private equity or straight financial folks, and they say, Jeff, how do we make money at this business? Like, we can give all kind of terms. Hey, you got to make more than you spend and blah, blah, blah. But once you kind of move all that out of the way, to me, the essence of the industry, when you drill it right down to it is that you have to get people to care about your product. And so when people uh, make those kind of comments, I'm super appreciative because I'm talking on a real maybe the most real situation I've ever been a part of in wrestling. Um, and so it's very natural for me. But when I see those comments, I'm flattered.
I don't know how you couldn't be. We're watching some silly stuff here from July 2nd, 2001. We're seeing in the backstage area yet another vignette for Vince McMahon and Kurt Angle and Corey Wilson. I mean, listen, I've never written television, but here we are without commercials, about 43 minutes and change into the show. So we're essentially right halfway through the show. And man, we have gotten one after another appearance from Vince McMahon. Is this too much, Vince, perhaps on TV?
See, okay, so I'm gonna try to tie this back into the entire WCW WWF branding of it all. When you just roughly said, "Are we seeing too much events?" And it's easy for us to say, "Oh God, yes." But on the flip side, it's his product and he's running the show and he's branding it and he's creating it and the buck stops with him. So the expectation that we would, and I know there's ebbs and flows of each episode, but this is the product they were putting out. And he's hit more home runs and grand slams than struck out, but we've kind of harped on it during this era. Man, I'm not sure they were even getting any singles. Would you say that? Because they just it feels like they're bouncing around. And we've seen Kurt and Stone Cold and Tori and Vince 5 times in this show already. I think
Yeah, that's right.
4.
Sounds crazy, but I mean,
And are we still in the first hour of Raw or roughly at it?
yeah,
Right?
we're finishing the first hour. We're going to the second hour.
Okay, and seen them 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's the state of the product in 2000. Interesting. Very interesting. As Y2J rolls down the ring. Johnny?
What do you think of, when we're taking a look at 2001 here? This is a very young Chris Jericho. Of course, he jumped ship back in 99, right before the big Y2K scare. And at the very end of 2001, later in this year, is the night where he's going to beat Stone Cold and The Rock on the same night and kind of become the guy. He'll headline WrestleMania next year against Triple H, but it'll kind of be an afterthought because everybody's so focused on what they just saw with Hogan and Rock. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. But when you took a look, I mean, you had had a WWF experience, you left, have a WCW experience, you come back, have a less than awesome WWF experience, but you're at least seeing guys like when the Radicals jumped or the year prior when Jericho jumped. Were you trying to monitor how WCW talent that was now in WWE, how they were doing to see if there was anything you could learn or apply to your own career? Or was that not even the way you were thinking at the time?
No, I absolutely. I mean, at this stage, I'm getting paid through October. It goes without saying that I'm thinking of, all right, what is a potential opportunity down the pike? I watched this match, this episode. I don't remember a lot of this, bits and pieces of it, all this, but I certainly wanted to see where they were going to go with it all. But seeing a guy like Jericho, we're similar height, similar build. Um, seeing him have the success, not only was I happy for him and happy to see the continued transition, I guess you could say, of the product. Because you got to remember, let me go back to the step point. When I watched the WWF in the 80s, he was obviously all big guys, Hogan, Warrior. I mean, Savage was considered a small guy during those times. All the, it just was monsters. Brett came in, me, Sean, a few others. You could just kind of see, we'll say the work rate became a little bit more important, a little bit more important. When we got in the Attitude Era, for the most part, work rate, I don't want to say it was a penalty, but man, it was more shock TV and outlandish characters that took the forefront in so many ways. And we talked about the WCW situation that, I think my in-ring ability and the end of the day, I think whether it was Kevin Sullivan, Vince Russo, the committee, whatever, they said, we can count on Jeff. He's going to give us a good match. He can talk, he can work, he can kind of check those boxes. So now, there is no number two. There's only a number one. When I saw a guy like Chris having not just good success, but great success, it inspired me. It inspired me knowing, okay, this is the leader in the marketplace. This is kind of where things are going. As far as what's important for the promoter uh, in their assessment of talent, what's going to be a priority. And Chris, like I said, he wasn't just up there; he was at the very top of the card. So it was something that I was aligned with mentally. I'm like, okay, that's a good thing.
The Dudley boys here are the ECW icons at this point, but they've certainly started to make a name for themselves amongst the top guys in the WWE. We mentioned they're going to be in some of the main events that are coming up. They're the tag team champions. Um, Instagram, a wrestling historian, has always got some good questions, and they say, let's fantasy book here. If Vince McMahon hadn't sent you home, how would you have liked your role in the invasion storyline to play out? Thanks in advance.
What's his name?
Instagram, a wrestling historian.
If he's such a historian, then how does he have the facts wrong? Did Vince really send me home?
No, of course, he's talking about in storyline. I hold the very fate of.
But literally, I will say this: I do believe there is a, Conrad. We chuckle, and I did HBQ radio, Conrad Friday, and a guy in studio, a huge Conrad Thompson fan. Just that he listens to all your pods and this and that, and they listen to ours. He knew it dropped on Tuesday and this episode and that episode. But he was chuckling about, yeah, you were my guy from Memphis, but man, I hated you. All those, just the narrative, the narrative, the narrative. There's a lot of folks to this day thinks Vince fired me on TV, and that was real, like 100% real.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, it's the power of the business. It's the power of TV. It's the power of the narrative. I don't get too political right now, but there's that old saying: you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. Once it kind of starts going out, I've saw some comments as of late when I'll say some kind of debate that folks would say, "Yep, the the people that bought into the narrative of, I'll just say kind of TNA LOL that we've chuckled about. Once it kind of starts, there's some folks that maybe tap out, maybe get a job, maybe get quit watching, get off social media, whatever it is. But their opinion's already made up of who Jeff is, what he's about, what if they miss 2 or 3 years or 4 or 5 years, 6, 7 years, they don't know a lot of ground in there. And that's just kind of the nature of the business. And here, as we see back on camera again, Vince and Tori Wilson. So this is either the 6th or 7th time, but no. Back to the historian's question. He said, what would it have been What's the exact question? What role would I have played?
What would you have liked to have done? We know that we're going to see The Undertaker working with DDP. We know we're going to see Booker T working with Stone Cold.
So the hindsight's 2020. What I would have loved, just because I believe it was set up in a way that he fires me on national TV. Somehow, some way, Shane rehires me. Shane Stephanie rehire me. But basically, I'm on the return, and I'm going to be the I don't say just mouthpiece, but I'm coming to get revenge, and I am a part of one of the faces of the heel WCW brand. I think that would have fit right into it. I mean, just in so many ways. But let me be my Southern accent. I'm the antagonist to the New York brand, City Slick, WWF, and everything that went with it.
We're seeing some surgery footage here. It's still amazing to me that here you are all these years into your wrestling career and you've never had a surgery. Like, I need to knock on wood again. My goodness. But this is about Chris Benoit's neck surgery, which was done by Dr. Mark Youngblood. Youngblood's describing the damage. And then, of course, we get some of the footage of the procedure. He's going to say it took 3 hours to do this surgery, but it went well. And he's basically going to say that, well, Benoit's going to be out for a year. Is that the most devastating type of surgery that you remember wrestlers talking about? Like, how was this sort of neck surgery discussed?
So Dr. Adair, who was on with us, in this era, I was probably seeing him. I don't say once a week, but probably every other week. I was in a lot, and being with the mindset, as we talked about, kind of the preventive maintenance. Don't come to him after something's already kind of been broken and all this. But he would often kind of talk about, you got cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. But man, you get into that cervical area, you're not that lumbar, your low back, and thoracic, your mid. Not that those are walks in the park and all that kind of stuff, but you get up in that neck area, then you're really talking about grip strength and arms and everything that went with it. So um, he was he's the one who kind of educated me on, and not just kind of take care of it, just be hyper aware of. Uh, you just better be aware of your neck health. And when I would see guys like that, there was how many guys have had neck surgery? Kind of look through the years. There was a run of guys that retired.
Yes.
It's I mean, it's the reality of our industry. I'll say that. Oh, it's fake. Well, those surgeries damn sure ain't fake for those guys.
There you see Sean Waltman. He is the light heavyweight champion. I've always been fascinated why the cruiserweight thing seemed to work so well for WCW, but the light heavyweight thing never really takes off for the WWF.
Never.
You got to see both. Why do you think it worked one place and it didn't work another?
So I think I'm going to go back to timing's everything. And when Eric and Nitro and the branding and the cruiserweight, let me ask you a hypothetical. Would the cruiserweight belt gotten over as well as it did if you took the luchadors out of it? I don't think so. I think the luchadors help brand not just that belt, but the product. But I think they were integral into, the cruiserweights, man, all these cool moves. And did you see Psychosis do this? And did you see Ray do that? That I think in the DNA of the product, of the brand, was the cruiserweight title. And you immediately thought, probably subconsciously, you thought, oh, wow, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, whatever other luchador kind of mixed in there. And in the WWE brand, you're going to lead front and center with, you always thought of Hulk Hogan's catchphrases: "Say your prayers, take your vitamins, the big guy dropped the leg." So you didn't really think of a cool move. Then you get into, the 90s era, and the work rate became a little bit more, but it was still the promo and the look, the persona, and the hitman's got his glasses and all that. WWF, I never attempted to brand their product they never focused on in ring. I'm not saying up to this point. I'm not saying modern day, but up to this point, Conrad, would you say WWF focused on in ring quality stuff as a tip top priority? Yes, they did, but I just don't think it's a tip top priority.
No, they had a reputation. WCW had a reputation for the undercard being outstanding and really weak main events, Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and the like. The WWF, on the other hand, had a reputation for having really fast matches of little to no consequence, lots of gaga, lots of emphasis on story, lots of backstage skits, and a main event that was pretty kick-ass. So a strong main event with a weak undercard, the exact opposite of what you got in WCW.
Yeah. And I think going back to this exact episode, the clash of the brands, the consumer, the buying audience knew that better than us, or as well as us. And I think that in and of itself made them regurgitate the main event. Go ahead.
One of the biggest missed opportunities I've always felt like here was if you're going to do an in-ring or a storyline version of an invasion angle and you're going to have WCW represented, how do we think the best representative, the one that'll get fans emotionally invested in the idea, is that if the leader of WCW is Shane McMahon, and nothing says hardcore extreme championship wrestling like Stephanie McMahon, if they could have pulled the trigger and secured Eric Bischoff to come in as the torchbearer for WCW, and you had Paul Heyman for ECW, which we're going to see, but we don't get Bischoff. He was the missing ingredient. And I know eventually we get him, but that's after all this is finished. That's a missed opportunity, don't you think?
Massive. Boy, you once again, my world listeners, Conrad puts the entire episode in an elevator pitch. Bingo. The brand disaster was just that. You mean to tell me it's 2001 and since about Nitro came on the air in 95, right? Yeah. So roughly a 6-year promotional war. And we're going to see it come to fruition with a father and his 2 kids fighting it over. No, that didn't sell. It didn't work. Was not anywhere close to being able to emotionally invest in that because it was real and the people knew it was real. And they immediately went, I'm not buying Stephanie and Shane and Vince fighting over it. Nope, they all own it. They're going to sit down at turkey dinner and, it just didn't pass the muster test at all.
It just doesn't make any sense. It feels, well, it doesn't feel authentic. Maybe that's the word I'm trying to look for. Like in an authentic, invasion, I need to see Goldberg. I need to see Sting. I need to see DDP and Ric Flair. And like, I want to see Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan in the NWO. And instead of us having, respectfully, Booker T and Buff Bagwell, and what I really got excited about with Nitro, above almost anything else, were the luchador matches and the crazy NWO promos. If we just had the NWO come out to cut a promo, man, it would have set the tone for the whole thing. And the Observer back then said, if there's any lesson that should be learned from the XFL, it's that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's what this takeaway is to me. Like, oh man, if this is the invasion, if this is what we're starting, I've been looking forward to it for a long time, but I don't know that I want to keep going down the rabbit hole. Like watching this stuff back is just kind of depressing because you can't help but think what could have been.
Well, I was going to say, and they could have pulled the nose up, but they didn't want to. But going down that road of Shane and Stephanie, and the inauthentic. Look, we've leaned into that word so many different times in a lot of different episodes, but that at its very core, that it just did not fly. The other night on my phone conversation, I hate to keep going back to it, but me and Lawler were talking about different things, and then we got into a Memphis TV discussion and something that was fun or whatever it is. But I'm like, yeah, Jerry, I said, the uniqueness of, I'm trying to think exactly how we landed on this, because it'll be, if I think of it, it's good a little good context. But the heart of it is that Lawler on Saturday mornings would deliver a promo with descriptors on what you were going to see on Monday night and why you were going to see it, and almost kind of how you're going to see it. At the end of the day, Lawler would finish his promos and the king is going to kick your ass, said better than that. But the descriptors of this story in the people's mind, man, you've said it again too, the aftermags. They fantasy booked it in their brain. They saw the Billionaire Ted skits. They've seen this, they've seen that. Then all of a sudden they got this, and the people are like, what? No thanks. And I also think all the powers that be, Vince and everybody around him, I mean, how quick did they give up on all? 6 months?
Tonight. They gave up on it tonight. They had one set of plans, and what we're going to see go so poorly that Vince McMahon called an emergency meeting after the show in his hotel room, and it went into the wee hours of the night. Yeah, and it changed. Everything changed. The reaction to WCW was so disastrous here that they totally switched it up, and we got what we got. It was a mess, and they carried it through Survivor Series. And when it was over, when the WCW invasion of the WWF was over, we introduced Ric Flair. And a few months after that, we introduced the NWO with Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash. And a few months after that, we introduced Eric Bischoff. I know what you're saying to yourself.
Goodness gracious.
Wouldn't it have made sense if we debuted the NWO on night 1 in Atlanta the following week on July 9th with Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, Scott Hall? Yeah, it would have.
From a business perspective, they would have had to written all those checks, right?
But I mean, listen, they still wound up writing a little bit of a check. Process where we are right here. We're talking about they're going to come back in February of the following year. So this narrative that I'm not going to let all my money just go, it was 7 months. You had 7 months left. Like, no matter what those guys were making, this is the biggest idea in history.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, you're going to make it back in droves. But this is when Vince McMahon got into, in my opinion, I think Vince has always been unfairly dunked on, because I do think context is king. We should just remind everybody, Vince Russo left him. He's got a whole team of other people who are helping support him, but those people are also being asked to pull double duty for the XFL. JR's helping call the games. They're asking Bruce Pritchard to come produce interviews with the cheerleaders. You got Michael Hayes doing something for the XFL. We got stretched a little too thin here, boys. Yeah. We're trying to build up ECW, which we just purchased, build up WCW, which we just purchased, promote our biggest WrestleMania of all time, turn the biggest star we've ever had into a heel. We just went public, by the way, so now we've got all this new and intense scrutiny. And oh, by the way, we're going to start a new football league to compete with the NFL.
That is insane. See, there's your context.
Like creatively, if you would just assume, well, look at the high we've been on with wrestling. Just cruise control, man. They got it. Hell, I beat ECW. I beat WCW. I own all of wrestling now. What? We got this. Bruce, could you come cut some promos with these cheerleaders? And Michael Hayes, like, let's think about to get rid of a coin toss. What could we do? Hey, and JR, I know your real passion is football. Why don't we just table the wrestling for a little bit? I still want you to do that. But on the weekends, could you come call the games for me too? I know you're running talent relations and calling the games and calling. What? It's a lot.
There's your context, folks. While we do the pod, that's good stuff. I mean, it's fascinating. It is. And now here we are, 2024. Just kind of look at where the industry's at today. Yeah. It's exciting. I mean, it's just. Whew.
We should mention that your boy, Jerry Lawler, he's involved in all this. Let me explain. Hudson had talked with Jim Ross a few months back when he came to Atlanta, and Ross gave him the impression he would strongly be considered for an announcing job. This was when they were under the impression WCW would have the Saturday night late night time slot on TNN. When that fell through, nobody was called back. Hudson wrote Ross a few weeks ago, noting he had until June 15th to make a decision on whether or not to go back to work full-time at his government job or just continue to work part-time. At his work, he had been switched to part-time because he had spent so much time out of the office working for WCW. Ross did get back to Hudson before the deadline, telling him in the short term there was nothing that appeared on the horizon for him, which was likely because Joey Styles seemed to be the prime candidate for the WCW job. Hudson then informed his work that he was going back full-time. Then, with the plans to introduce a WCW announcing crew at the July 2nd show in Tacoma and the Styles deal having fall through over money issues, Hudson was given a call to come to Connecticut for a week of training and be the lead voice of WCW. Hudson got there, but surprised the WWF by telling them he had gone back to work full-time and couldn't take the job, but would be willing to help them since they were in something of a jam, and agreed to take the spot for a few weeks to get the angle going. Hudson's partner was supposed to be Jerry Lawler. Lawler was called by WWF officials several days before Hudson was called, asking him to start work in Tacoma, which he agreed to do, and what was said to be a secret arrival in an angle booked by the creative team. When the word got out, Lawler denied having ever talked with anyone or that he would ever come back, because the WWF, like with Diamond Dallas Page, wanted the introduction to be a surprise on Raw. Nobody from the WWF denied the story or would publicly confirm it to us. According to Lawler and a well-known source in the WWF, the final deal was agreed upon on June 28th. But what exactly happened from there is more questionable. According to Lawler, he was supposed to be introduced with Hudson by Shane on Raw as the new WCW announcing team, with his wife Stacey Carter accompanying him to ringside. Lawler was told the next day that Vince wanted to make it clear they had no role for Carter other than appearing on Raw or SmackDown with Lawler at both shows in Tacoma, which Lawler agreed to. This would have resulted in both missing their scheduled show booked in Memphis on July 3rd, and on June 30th, when he received the travel itinerary, Lawler was called again and told he would be getting a contract and she wouldn't. At some point, Lawler backed out of the deal. Within the WWF, the heat was put on Lawler for the deal falling apart, claiming he was the one who tried to change the agreed upon deal to force them into giving Carter a contract, and that's where the negotiations fell apart. There was already heat internally of giving Lawler the face-saving concession of allowing Carter to appear on Raw and SmackDown. With literally nowhere else to turn, the decision was made to go with Anderson, who had virtually no experience calling matches, but was known in wrestling as being one of the greatest talkers of all time. So that is the backstory of how we got Arn Anderson as a last-minute surprise, but it was supposed to be Joey Styles. When Joey couldn't do it, it becomes Scott Hudson. And Scott Hudson's supposed to do it with Jerry Lawler. And when Lawler pulls out, it becomes Arn Anderson. Just everywhere you look, this is not going well. But with something you and I have never spent any time talking about, do you have a theory or is there any speculation why there was so much animosity on the WWE side towards Stacey? Like, I never understood why Vince sort of drew a line in the sand, no Stacey on the program.
See, I didn't even know that till you said that. As far as like nothing or didn't want her. So you'd have to probably clarify that. But I think from a talent perspective, Lawler and the cat don't go as far as a presentation. She would have to be on her own, or the valet of another talent. I don't see her working with Lawler under any circumstances, just because of the aura around him, the king. Um, yeah, he didn't need a sidekick. It was that kind of the set of circumstances. Did he want her to come back and be with him on camera?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, all I know is what was written there. But I mean, by the way, that is the 7th appearance from Vince McMahon and Tori Wilson we've gotten on this show. This is not aging well.
No, it's it's no, it's not. Think about that 7 times.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it feels like we're too. This is the era too where we got a McMahon in every corner. Man, nobody gives a shit. Never did I ever sit around with my buddies and one of them say, "Hey, man, I hope Linda McMahon gets control of WWE." Oh, not me, buddy. I want to see what Stephanie can do with WWE. Oh, but what about Shane? Said no one gives a shit about this. This feels like a masturbatory angle. It's just for them. Nobody gives a fuck. Were you ever emotionally invested, or do you know anyone who was ever emotionally invested? And I mean, I say that, but then when Linda stood up in that WrestleMania 17 main event after she'd been, comatose for so long, when she stood up, the crowd went bananas. So I get that, we got the payoff, but
The story.
golly, it was frustrating for me. I just want to see the matches. I don't care about, I don't like you, Dad. Well, I got problems with you, daughter. This is
Well,
silly.
and I think in the DNA of the wrestling audience, Vince is not only the face of the WWF, but his family was just that supporting role. They never bought into the Shane and Stephanie owning it outright and inside baseball and we're going to fight. It made for kind of succession and this kind of discussion that we're having today, but it obviously never clicked because I think, and I've said this, the greatest the Vince, I think, maybe the best heel character in history because there was so much. He was so reality based. The boss, and everybody can. Everybody. You wake up, and whoever the boss may be, it may be in your employment, it may be team you play on, it may be your spouse, it may be just any kind of walk of life. It is that authority figure in your life that you innately butt heads with. And Vince played his role to a T. But then you moved it into what we're seeing here, seeing him 7 and 8 times. It was not an emotional connection. People didn't emotionally connect with Lawler and I mean with Vince and Tori Wilson 7 or 8 times a show is too much. And as we see that, I just saw that. So Heyman was the color commentator and Ross was play by play for the first hour and a half of this show, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And they just got up from their desk and going to welcome in Arn and Scott.
This is the WCW introduction at this point.
See, and when you have Shane coming down as the face,
It's stupid. It's just a miss. It feels inauthentic.
well, it is inauthentic.
Yeah.
Completely. There's Nick Patrick in the ring, my man, Tricky Nicky. That's
So they're switching it around. Of course, you see the bug in the bottom left. There's the WCW logo in the corner of the screen. And you also see that the referee is Nick Patrick. This is the era where they're going to go out and hire Nick Patrick and Charles Robinson. And I mean, a lot of the WCW referees are going to come in.
Oh, and there was another thing, as you were saying, kind of the wheels coming off. I read in the notes that during this time, Kevin Dunn was having a child.
That's right.
So if that doesn't, your executive producer back, that's kind of Vince's right hand man, who's also probably doing XFL, just and see Hudson he's that was a little bit of a heel persona right there, right?
I,
Showing his shirt.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really know what to expect here, but
I, well, he just kind of did a little cocky thing. Of course, they're going to boo the shit out of this.
by the way,
Yeah.
when I see Stacy Keebler, I'm reminded, I haven't said it in a while here on My World, so I just want to say it in a loud and clear voice. I hate David Flair. Like, I hate him so much. I hate him a lot, a lot, a lot.
He's a good dude, man. You be nice. You be
He's
nice.
awful. He's the worst.
Oh, he's a good man. You be nice, sir.
Of course, there's Arn Anderson. You want to talk about an unenviable position. This is a guy who's got a great reputation as being one of the best talkers in the business, but never has he ever been asked to put on the cans and do color commentary.
Tough job.
Tough job indeed. And she's going to serve as our ring announcer, I suppose. Stacy Keebler introducing the world to Nick Patrick. And here comes the music. William Regal.
When you sit back with the sound down as we are and don't know anything, Scott Hudson had a heel mannerism. With the sound off, this all looks like a heel presentation. It looks like a WCW invasion, if you will. What did they expect?
So Regal is telling Shane McMahon, hey, I understand it's going to be a WCW show, but that doesn't mean you have to be here. So I'm going to bring security out and we're going to escort you out of the building back to your hotel. And Shane is acting like, well, that's fine. You know, I'm not an egomaniac. I don't have to be around the wrestlers.
And Regal is an authority figure for Raw, correct?
He's the commissioner for Raw.
Yeah.
And coming up next is the first ever WCW match on WWF television. It's Booker T versus Buff Bagwell. Did you ever see this? Do you remember ever watching this?
The match?
Yeah.
I watched it live.
But you haven't seen it since that.
Correct. Right. And this is a little inside baseball, Conrad. So I'm a young pup, 93, get to the WWF, knew Sean from the territories, knew a couple of guys. Yeah, I knew more than a couple of guys. But anyway, I knew what I didn't know, that I'm not going to work like I did in Tennessee at WWF because I had watched enough and understood that. So I immersed myself in Scott Hall. God rest his soul, but God bless him. Scott and Sean, probably the two biggest that really helped me out. Mike Rotundo, Mr. Fuji. I could name bits and pieces of different guys, but I soaked it up. But understanding how to work the WWF style, I knew without question, Buff did not know how to work that style because I'd worked with him at WCW, watched him, worked with him multiple times. It is not the same. You're playing ball different. It's on defense. In basketball, you play a zone and a man to man. Oh, you're both playing defense. No, the rules are different. I don't know if I'm giving better analogies, but it's just a different mindset. And Booker hadn't been there. Neither one of them been there. I kind of remember. Well, I don't kind of. I vividly remember thinking, are they going to work WCW style? If they do, they're cooked. They are cooked out of the gate.
What, I mean, if you had to break it down, hallmarks of a WWF match versus a WCW match, because when you say a WCW style, I'm sure a lot of our listeners' ears went right up.
More wrestling high spots. Oh man, let me think. The timing, the pacing, the heat's different. The cadence is different. And this may be too inside baseball, and it may not always be apples to apples. There may be, oh, well, they do that in both companies. And I would say, yes, you're right. But if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. I hate to say it that simple, but there is without question, there is a difference in when the comeback is blown and the progression of false finishes, there's a definite WWF style, much more storytelling and pauses and let this sink in. And, um, I'm trying to think of different examples, but you got to let things breathe and let some drama build. Um, the simple fact of when it's time to go home before the comeback and you do some type of a double down, both guys kind of got to lay still and bring the people into your emotion as opposed to going right into the comeback. Um, little nuances, Conrad, little nuances.
Of course, we're watching Booker T in the now infamous WCW Nitro match against Buff Bagwell.
I know we don't sound up, but are they booing this? I think
they're indifferent. You can see them; they're not moving.
Sure,
no one cares, and that's a shame. It's speculated in the Observer that Bischoff was contacted and told, "Hey, we want you for 2 weeks. We want you to debut in Atlanta, and then we want you to work this pay-per-view." Invasion pay-per-view coming up on the 22nd. So he would have seemingly worked on the 9th and again on the 22nd. They wanted a singles match with him and Vince and for Vince to eat him up. And he said, no, thanks. Not interested in that. And of course, Bischoff at the time denied, no, I was never contacted. And I'm surprised that anyone thinks that I would do that. I'm not doing that. And we know, of course, in 02, he did come back, but that wasn't, hey, why don't you come in and let us beat you and then never hear from you again? He came in as a general manager for Raw and it worked out.
Interesting. I mean, it's very interesting.
Isn't it crazy to think? And Jeff, I know there's a narrative out there, but I'm pulling for Buff Bagwell. I like Buff Bagwell. I think he's going to be one of the great success stories.
He's a character, man. Always has been.
You're watching his last nationally televised match right now.
No way.
That's it, man. He's 31 years old and this is it. Is that not wild?
Wow.
I mean, think about that. This guy's been on TV at this point every week for at least 10 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, he started WCW young.
Yeah. And now done. Like, he is one of the greater what ifs in wrestling to me because, and I know he's had some ups and downs and there's lots of people who've got their opinion formed on him and I'm not trying to change your mind, but I'm just saying the idea that dude had his last match at 31, last television match. I know he still wrestled and did a bunch of indies and blah, blah, blah.
He came in for a hiccup here and there, but I get it. He wasn't nationally televised. Because I don't think he was on Spike.
Yeah, he did some WWE stuff. He did some NWA stuff, but that was really the early days before
Yep.
It was all on fire. So this is really like his last moment in the sun. And I know he did like the XWF tapings and I mentioned the WWA stuff. So there were opportunities, but
nationally televised.
Yeah.
I will be damned.
And by the way, it's worth mentioning the day before this, they did this match in a WWF ring in Spokane, Washington. Nobody talks about that, but they did a house show the night before, dialed it in, and now they're doing the match here.
Booker and Buff.
And poof, it's over. Doesn't make any sense.
But those kind of little fun facts, it's not fun for Marcus, but damn. Like 2001.
Yeah, you want to talk about what a radical character he was.
Yes. Charismatic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in wrestling, people want to talk about, hey man, we're just looking for reactions. Good or bad, just react. We need something. Bagwell, man, he had that in spades and it doesn't happen.
A good looking guy that you want to smack the taste out of his mouth. And when he added the top hat and coming to the airbrush deal and everything that went with it, he was easy to hate.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning the next day, because this is July 2nd at the Tacoma Dome. The next day, they're going to tape SmackDown in the same building, July 3rd. Bagwell's going to do a run in the main event. And then 4 days later, he was supposed to wrestle in North Charleston at the Coliseum, but he's wrestling, or he's substituted in that match by Mark Jindrak. So this is it. And by the way, the now infamous, I guess, depending on who you ask, water bottle incident with him and Shane Helms was earlier in the week. So Buff Bagwell, as he's wrestled that match, no matter what you thought of the match, he did it with staples in his head. I'm just saying.
No freaking way.
Yeah.
All of this week.
All the exact same week.
And the Jindrak deal, was he done?
Yeah, I mean, this is Buff's last match. He's going to do a run in on SmackDown the next day at the very end, and that's it. And when I say he does a run in, I don't mean by himself. I mean like the whole WCW group comes out and he's amongst them. But he had exactly 2 matches in the WWE, a house show the day before and this, and that's it. And think about that. Booker T is going to go on to become the most decorated, most celebrated WCW star ever here in the WWF.
Yeah, 2-time Hall of Famer.
He starts a real Hall of Fame career at this point. That's after being the most decorated guy in WCW history. And they're beating his ass out of the building. They beat him up in the ring, they being Buff Bagwell, Stone Cold, and Kurt Angle. So right now, for the rest of this segment, Buff Bagwell is rubbing shoulders with Kurt Angle and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and we'll never fucking see him again. It's crazy.
I'm telling you, Conrad, this business is so bizarre. Wow.
We got a fun question here from This Is Wrestling Film, and a little of this bubbled up because of some fantasy booking that Eric and I did on 83 Weeks a few weeks ago. Double J, hope you and Conrad are keeping well. WCW has been gone for longer than it existed as that name. Would you be excited for a version of WCW to be launched on Netflix? Cheers, Martin. This has become an issue because WCW is technically a brand and a trademark that is owned by WWE. And we know they're going to have carte blanche on Netflix. They're going to be uncensored. They can do whatever. They don't have to sell a television network on, can we call it this? It's Netflix. So maybe they can paint outside the lines a little bit. What do you think about reviving a WCW brand?
As I sit and watch the closing moments of this Raw that was a disaster, and fittingly, it is the 8th or 9th appearance from Vince and Tori.
Tori's now undressing Vince in the backstage area. This is going to be the final few minutes of Monday Night Raw. And I wonder why fans tuned out in droves.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Reviving WCW on Netflix.
Hypothetically, what if Mike Tenay and Scott Hudson were calling it? Hypothetically, what if Charlotte Flair was in there? What if Tessa Blanchard was in there? What if Brock Anderson was in there? I mean, is there enough connective tissue with these second generation performers?
Here is something as much as I would hope and want, and I could get emotionally invested in WCW on Netflix. The reality is that we are 23 years removed from the brand being on television. The NWO still sells a boatload of merchandise, but WCW hadn't sold, to my knowledge, much of anything, a couple of retro shirts here and there or something to that effect. Connie, I just don't see a tremendous value there. But with that being said, you own the IP, you own the library, and you have the ability to have multiple connective tissue, whether real relatives or whatever it may be, and you have a throwback of lineage that truly exists. There is a run of 83 weeks. You have all that kind of stuff. So could it work with a focused effort? I think you could hit it out of the park. But I don't think you need to rest on the laurels of the WCW that we knew in the 90s. It would have to be established and stories told and a real focus. And I'm not sure they would do that. But the short answer is yes, it could be done. I think it could be incredibly successful too.
So after we just saw Linda catch Vince McMahon drop trowel with Tori, this is how we'll close the show. We're in the backstage area and we see Kurt Angle and Steve Austin and Buff Bagwell just beating the ever loving snot out of Booker T.
All the way.
Stone Cold's going to throw him through that back door and he'll go all the way out the building. Just an absolute beatdown of the debut of WCW on Monday Night Raw. Featured their U.S. champion and world champion, because it's the same guy, just getting the ever loving snot beaten out of him and thrown out the back door. That's how we debut this new challenger brand.
That's what I'm saying is, so they're going to have an emergency meeting and like, hey, this doesn't work. I don't think they thought it was going to work to begin with.
What they came up with to save it, as you see now, you take a look here at Buff Bagwell trying to be the chicken shit heel. Hey, look, we're friends, right? Nope. The WWF just take care of Buff Bagwell too. They're Stone Cold and Austin doing the beatdown. And that's it for Buff Bagwell. He's going to do a run in the following night with a bunch of other guys for WCW and no more. What's always been funny to me about this scene is there's a female security guard looking through the other side of that glass. Guys are just getting the absolute shit beat out of them and she's just watching.
Look, and that's it.
And that'll do it. That's how they go off the air, man.
So who killed WCW? Right there.
The WWF boy.
Yes, no, Vince McMahon did.
Of course, the idea they come up with to save it is ECW was cool. Let's reintroduce them. So the following week, they introduce ECW. They build that pay-per-view for 13 days, and you would think that'd be it. But we're going to limp along from July all the way through November. Survivor Series will be where we put a button on it. Jeff, that's the first time you sat down and watched WCW is Raw since it happened in July of 2001. What did you think?
So we're doing all this smack talk about it. And we saw Vince and Tori 9 times. We saw maybe what you said, a bunch of distractions, or I said that we collectively said wasn't focused. WCW was the burial by design. But at the end of the day, didn't the invasion buy rate do very good?
Oh, it's the highest. I mean, yeah, it blew it up. Yes, absolutely.
So with all that being said,
people still wanted to see it.
What the WCW, and that was a part of kind of the TNA mindset. There's some folks out there that no matter how good Coca-Cola tastes, they still want to drink Pepsi. And if they want an alternative brand, no matter what, people want alternative brands. I think, at AEW, the challenger brand, the alternative brand, it's the reality of anything, of put a hamburger stand on one corner, put another hamburger stand across the street. Oh, no. You won't sell any hamburgers. The other place is the number one place in town. Nope, you're wrong. Both of them start selling a boatload of hamburgers. It's just how the world works.
Check this out, Jeff.
Okay.
In January of 2001, the WWF sold 625,000 pay-per-views for the Royal Rumble. In February of 2001, the WWF sold 590,000 pay-per-views for No Way Out 2001. For WrestleMania 17, they sold 1,040,000 buys at $39.95. Now in Backlash, just 1 month later, now at this point, we've turned Stone Cold heel. We're down to 375,000 buys.
6.5, 1 million, down 375. Okay.
Yep. Now we're going to go to 405 for Judgment Day, 445 for King of the Ring. If we skip 2 months and we go to SummerSlam, it does 570. Okay. If we fast forward to Survivor Series where we blow this story off, 450.
Yep.
The Invasion pay-per-view, 775.
775?
Yeah. It beat SummerSlam. It beat the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
The only thing that could save the WWF when they were free falling with a heel a heel Stone Cold Steve Austin was the Invasion storyline, and they didn't come back.
Dude, today's podcast has been educational, fun, fact-finding, what ifs, all in between. But when you look at those numbers, and know that the WCW brand sold, period. I can't say the creative was great that they said, oh shit, I got to see that. No, they kind of threw all that Invasion stuff in there, WCW brand. And back to our Netflix thing. Maybe the revitalization, because you can't kill memories.
You cannot kill a memory. Print it, boys and girls. That's how we'll finish this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed hanging with us. We're going to be back next week with our regularly scheduled programming. We're not going to be doing a watch along of old school wrestling history. Instead, we'll be talking about Victory Road 2009 in the coming weeks. It's the worst major wrestling show of 2009. And we're going to get the internal power play that's going on. And that's really the story behind the story. And that's what we're here for. And we're going to be talking about Shawn Michaels and a whole lot more here in the coming weeks. The best way to get involved is to ask your questions over on YouTube. And if you haven't already, let me just tell you, myworldpod.com, that is the home for all things Jeff Jarrett online. That's myworldpod.com. It's our YouTube channel and it's totally free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell. You don't want to miss when we go live. Also want to give a shout out to everyone who was with us as part of our live studio audience. We had Coach Rosie with us and Eric Green was with us. And I know iFitsZG was here and Alex Wheaton was here and Mr. Epic was here. And shout out to Coach Keith and Ernie and Michael and Denovia stopped by. Shout out to Bobby, the whole gang. We appreciate what you do for us at adfreeshows.com. Hope you'll join us as folks are listening to this tonight. Check out Sam Adonis.
I love it.
As you may remember, each and every month, we've got bonus episodes from all my podcast hosts. And now we've got brand new series like Tully Vision. That's right. Tully Blanchard is with us on adfreeshows.com. So's Kevin Sullivan. So's Lex Luger, the Blue Meanie, Mike Chioda, Nick Patrick, and one of my favorites, Mr. David Crockett. We're going to be recording an episode of the book tomorrow. We're going episodically, month by month, week by week, year by year. We're going to take a look at June of 1986 coming up next. And we've got over 100,000 hours of bonus content available for you right now, including every StarCast panel we ever did. You've got live Q&As, live watch-alongs, something for everybody at adfreeshows.com. So check it out and be sure to tune in next week at myworldpod.com, Jeff. I can't wait to watch what you're doing tomorrow night in Calgary. Can you give us any teasers?
Well, I'm going to go catch me few catfish this evening. And pod drops on Tuesday and Wednesday. Special enforcer. It's going to be special. Conrad, no hype here. No, I'm excited. First time for me back to Calgary in a long, long time. That city has, a special place in my heart for multiple reasons. So it'll be an emotional 36 hours. That's all I'll say.
Check it out, boys and girls. Don't you dare miss AEW Dynamite tomorrow night as you're listening to this. And be sure to tune in next Tuesday and every Tuesday right here on My World.
Peace.